This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
He is Greg, I am Nick, and of course this podcast is part of the CLNS Media Network, and this episode is brought to you by Prizepicks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the app today, use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Greg, let's start with the injury report, as we usually do, as we get ready for the game this weekend. Jalen Hawkins, Keion White did not practice on Wednesday. We are recording this early Thursday afternoon, as we usually do as well. I don't have much concern seeing that Jalen Hawkins played on Sunday night against Buffalo after sitting out practice and being limited and all that stuff. But what do you think? Any concern about Hawkins? And I hate to say it this way, but I think it's fair. Does it really matter about Keion White at this point?
That's a good way to put it, Nick. So Jalen Hawkins, a little bit interesting because, he went out for a play or two against the Bills. I saw it on film. They have it listed as a hamstring. It looked more like a knee to me when I was watching the film back, but, whatever. So the concern there is we saw Brendan Schooler go in for him.
Yeah.
It was not Kyle Duggar, which is interesting. And by the way, I meant to bring this up on Tuesday, was Kyle Duggar. I guess PFF found him like one snap, but I was ready to come out. I didn't think he played at all in that game on defense, which, given the Bills' multiple tight end sets and things like that, that's even if he did end up playing one snap, that to me, that says a lot. That, Kyle Duggar was not involved in that game against the Bills. And, who knows with what's going on with, running back. And we're starting to see trades around the NFL. Could Kyle Duggar be involved, at some point with the Patriots? Because you figured with, the Bills like to play 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends sometimes. You figured he'd be in there, but that the Patriots coaches didn't trust Kyle Duggar enough to play against a team that likes to run a lot of multiple tight end sets. I don't know. Not the greatest sign.
Let me jump in for a second there, too, because I want to mention this. When Jalen Hawkins went down against Carolina, it was Kyle Duggar who replaced him. And so, the change from the Carolina game to the Buffalo game, I would imagine tells us that either, as you said, we're getting closer to the trading deadline. Maybe they're trying to, take care of Duggar, or more likely they didn't love what they saw in the Carolina game when Duggar replaced Hawkins and said, we can't play him. We're going to play Brendan Schooler instead.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely something to make note of and keep an eye on as we go forward. The Keion White thing, it's an elbow. So I assume he's going to be back, taped up, brace, whatever he needs to do. What's interesting about that, so K'Lavon Chaisson was back at practice after missing the game. He was limited with a knee. Also Anthony Jennings, since we're talking about the edge group, he was limited with an ankle. What's big about this is I think we saw against the Bills that, and the defensive performance, was good, but there were certainly times when you were watching Keion White out there where you're like, they're really missing K'Lavon Chaisson. And, this would be a really nice spot to have Chaisson back, because he would be matched up against Kelvin Banks Jr., the rookie first rounder, who was one of those when we were talking about the Patriots looking for a left tackle. Do you take Will Campbell at the top, which I think both you and I said, yes, take him. Take him at 4. You need to get a left tackle. We'll see whether he's a left tackle for the future. But for now, we figured he would be a improvement, maybe a vast improvement over what they had the year previous. So the Patriots had to do it. Once they weren't able to get anybody in free agency, they had to do Will Campbell. And the question was, do you take Will Campbell at 4, or do you trade back and get like a Membu or Kelvin Banks or, what have you? And, I like Kelvin Banks' film, coming out, Justin Simmons also. at the time I said Justin Simmons' film by far was the best of any of the available left tackles in the draft. The question was his knee and also off-field concerns with him, and that's both of those things are why he dropped to the bottom of the first round.
Yeah.
But Banks is, he's doing a good job, not as good as Will Campbell. And so that's a position that the Patriots could take advantage of on Sunday. And so, having Chase on out there who actually knows how to rush the passer instead of like Keon White, who I don't know what he's doing out there, just sort of running around with his head down. I don't know. And plus the speed and what the Saints like to do with, Kamara and their receivers, and they like to do a lot of like end arounds and misdirection and things like that. Like you need somebody who knows what they're doing on the edge. So I think I don't really care if Keon White's ready for this game. I care if K'Lavon Chaison's ready for this game.
Yeah, man. I mean, as we got ready for the season, up until like the final 2 weeks of the preseason of camp, it felt like Keon White was going to maybe make some strides. And he had a pretty good camp early on. Middle of camp, he was okay. And Mike Smith was waxing poetic about him. And Keon White was talking about the new coaching staff and how he fits the staff. And it seemed like a great fit as far as how Keon White approaches the game and how the coaching staff asks what their defensive linemen to do. It felt like it was going to be a nice marriage. But ever since K'Lavon Chaisson leapfrogged him late in camp, it's been a disaster for Keon White. So maybe he can turn it around, but it's not looking great so far. Guys limited. Greg mentioned Jennings. He mentioned Chaisson. Christian Barmore also limited, of course. He's been pretty much limited all year. They're managing him. I would not be freaked out about that. Joshua Farmer, who made a couple plays against Buffalo aside from the splash on James Cook. He was limited. Milton Williams was limited. Wouldn't be too concerned about that. He played about 60% of the snaps with the ankle last weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Wenu also limited. I do want to ask you quickly, since I brought up Farmer, a pretty interesting reaction from Mike Vrabel with the media where he said he doesn't necessarily fault Farmer for that personal foul because he said there was a late whistle and James Cook was looking like he was going to try to lateral it back to Josh Allen. Would you agree with that assessment or do you disagree with that assessment?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I'm, actually both of those personal foul penalties that happened in that game, like I'm okay with. Like I'm very much, and this is, whether I'm analyzing football or, I'm coaching, baseball or softball or whatever, like I'm fine with aggressive mistakes. And both of those, I mean, the hit on Josh Allen, it was a penalty just because it's in the head and neck area of a quarterback, especially one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You're going to get that. I mean, we saw it with, Tom Brady. It's a tough, it's very tough. And, you don't think you're going to hit like a 6'6" quarterback in the head, but, it's the way it goes sometimes. And that play with Farmer, when I heard, I don't know if it was Hoyer and Andrews that were talking about this. Somebody was talking about like Bill would just say, just two-hand touch the guy. But I didn't have a big problem with it. It's a big game. It's a crowd. You're on the road. You don't really know what's going on. I'm sure they talked about, hey, no play is dead against the Bills because they could lateral it to Josh Allen or Josh Allen will lateral it to somebody else. Like, I found the wording interesting. Vrabel said what he said, but also the wording that he said in terms of his instructions to the team was, I think it was play through the tackle. It wasn't play through the whistle. It was play through the tackle, which I've never heard that wording before. So in that case, if those are the set instructions, then Farmer didn't do what he was supposed to do or what he's been coached to do. But in general, I didn't have a problem with either of those personal foul penalties. It's just one of those moments. He's a young player. These things happen. Hopefully he learns from it. A lesson that he learned in game 5 of his rookie year on the road, Sunday Night Football in Buffalo, with the whiteout game and all this stuff, stuff happens. And, I'm okay with it because, the guy was trying to make a play. He did make a lot of plays in that game. Corey Durden made a lot of plays in that game. So I think there was a lot more good than bad. So I excuse that stuff.
I'm really excited about the interior defensive line. If
You
Farmer
should be.
continues to if Farmer continues to progress and improve, and Durden continues to progress and improve, Williams and Barmore is starting to look like 2023
Yep.
Barmore each and every week. Milton Williams has been good at times; he's been really good, and man, they can. And Kyrie's Tonga has been excellent. They can just rotate four or five guys on the interior defensive line, and pretty much all of them can be headaches. So I think that's such a huge piece of this defense moving forward for the rest of this year. As for the Saints, limited Alvin Kamara and my guy Ross Jackson from Locked On, pretty plugged in. Doesn't think it's too serious with Kamara. He should play. It's an ankle. Chase Young returned to practice, and he tried to sneak through the back door at the facility apparently, so nobody would see him, but a couple of people saw him. So Chase Young was back at practice limited. And I'll tell you the big one for me, Greg, is Cesar Ruiz. He was back at practice limited, and I'm sure you watched the film. I watched the game against the Giants, and holy shit, the Saints really, really need Ruiz back. And Ruiz hasn't been great on his own accord, but man, the interior offensive line, and I'm sure we'll get to it more in a little bit, but the interior offensive line and that offensive line overall, and Trevor Penning, by the way, also limited at practice. The Saints have some issues.
Yeah, so I texted with Nick Underhill, who used to be up here, because after I got done with the film, and I was like, because I saw that Dylan Radunz was also back at practice, played for Vrabel in Tennessee, and I was like, is Radunz going to be able to plug in at right guard? Because the guy that they played there, they have been playing there, Torricelli Simpkins, he's an undrafted free agent this year out of South Carolina. And, look, he's an undrafted free agent. But holy hell, he is not good. But Nick said he expects Ruiz to be back at right guard. And I think, both, if they get Chase Young and Cesar Ruiz back this week, that's pretty big for them. I mean, they're good up front. Getting another guy in the mix to maybe, keep Cam Jordan, who's long in the tooth, but still a really good player, a little bit more fresh. If Young can contribute, even if it's on, maybe third and longs or whatever, or, they like to kick Cameron Jordan inside on passing situations, that would be huge. So I would say the Saints, who, they don't have one of their cornerbacks, Yadam, Yiadom. I've never heard of him. Justin Reed at safety still out. But they've had some tough injury luck, especially on defense so far. But if they get Chase Young back and Cesar Ruiz, they're a better team come Sunday.
Some other news quick here before we get into the matchup on Sunday. Patriots sign running back Jashaun Corbin to the practice squad. I would imagine, Greg, as we have discussed before, and I think both you and I believe that this was going to be the case, the Patriots will kind of slow play the running back position, and that meant elevating Terrell Jennings and signing somebody to the practice squad, and then just see what you have between Ramondre and Travion and Terrell. Seems like that's the direction they're going.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, Vrabel spoke very well of Jennings the other day in front of the media, and about how, he's a good teammate and, he does all the right things. So it seems, at least where this program is right now, sort of the, touchy-feely, fatherly Mike Vrabel to the guys on this team. I think that they're more inclined to give the guys that they've been working with the first shot. So I think, we'll see Jennings elevated from the practice squad, probably not signed. See what happens on Sunday. I also think, we'll see more, tryout guys. And I think you sort of use this stretch, the Saints and the Titans, as an evaluation period to see what you have. You also increase the snaps for Travion Henderson, and see what he does with them. Maybe we've discussed this before. I just think that he's just a young guy getting used to the speed of the NFL game, and Perhaps, more snaps will help him. That's usually, how it goes. So take a look at it. But at some point, they're probably going to have to do something more. But first, evaluate what you have on the roster, and no reason to be in a rush with the trade deadline, about 3 weeks away.
I've got to ask you this question. So it looks like Lamar Jackson is going to be likely out again this week. The Ravens are 1-4. Their defense sucks. Derrick Henry, surprisingly, hasn't been a huge part of the offensive plan going back a couple weeks ago. Go back 2 weeks ago. I think he had 4 carries in the first half against the Chiefs. He finished with 8. He had 15 carries the week after last week against Texans. His high for carries this year is 18, and that was the first game when he had 169 yards. He's had a pretty quiet season aside from that opening game against Buffalo. I say all this to ask you the question: would King Henry make sense if you get down a couple weeks here? The Ravens keep losing, and we know the history between Henry and Vrabel. If the Patriots happen to win the next couple games and they're looking like at least they have a playoff shot on the radar, would King Henry make any sense to you?
The short answer is yes. I do have some concerns, however, and they would namely be, are they constructed for, a Derrick Henry? And I haven't watched him closely enough. I know, the Ravens usually have a fullback. I don't know if that's continued. I know they also do a lot of single back with him. Does he, where they are right now offensively, to sort of not quite hide the line, but help the line? Josh McDaniels has, mixed up a lot of things, and they've done a lot of, wide zone and boots off of that. Is that Derrick Henry's game? If you bring him in here, are you more of a straight ahead power team? Do you have to also go out and get a fullback for Derrick Henry? Is, being more of a power team, gap duo power, is that conducive to where you are right now? Are you going to have to alter the offense? How does that affect Drake May? We've seen him, probably be better, in the wide zone and boot action and getting him outside. If it's more of a traditional, power, straight ahead running team and the play action off that, which we saw for years with Tom Brady, is that necessarily the right thing for Drake May at this time? I'm not saying yes or no to any of these questions. I just think if you're going to do that, and I do think financially it makes some sense for the Ravens and also for the Patriots. It's not anything, absurd either way. There isn't a ton of dead money if the Ravens do that. So I would be open to it, but there's a lot of internal discussions that need to go on to figure out if this is the right thing for this team right now. And maybe it is. Maybe they're getting to the point. I want to see a little bit more with Stevenson and his ball security. Because if you remember, if you bring in Derrick Henry, he's obviously the starter. He's the guy. And
yeah,
how does that affect Stevenson? What do you do with Stevenson? Do you trade each one for one another? I don't know. But it's got to be a situation where you're going to be taking a shot at Ramondre Stevenson. Are you okay with that? Are you done with him? That sort of thing.
Yeah, and it should be said, obviously, Derrick Henry is a much better back than Ramondre Stevenson, but if you're concerned about fumbles, Derrick Henry's had a couple of huge fumbles this year as well.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not like he's been taking care of the football, so we have to keep that in mind. All right, we have a lot more to discuss, but first, Greg wants to tell you about Prizepicks.
You and I make decisions every day, but on Prizepicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this football season on Prizepicks, where it's good to be right. I had the app out. I had my picks in. Every weekend I do picks for the Patriots games. I almost knocked it out of the park this week. I was like 2 carries from Ramondre Stevenson. Stop fumbling from hitting. And man, I was really close. And also with I hit on Drake May. I think I just missed on Josh Allen. The Patriots defense was better than I thought in the first half. But I'll be back at it again, and I am going to hit one of these weeks. Prizepicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prizepicks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Want to pick more on Drake May's pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns? Now you can pick all 3 of them in the same lineup, only on Prizepicks. Yeah, got to pick Drake. He's on a heat of right now. Follow other Prizepicks players directly on the app and copy the lineups in one click, whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like. Hit the follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prizepicks. Download the Prizepicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups or after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prizepicks, it's good to be right.
Yeah, and shout out to Pasta and Jeremy Swayman. A little bit of a heat last night in the opener. Swayman looked good. He looked really good, and Pasta was again dominant.
It's amazing, getting into camp on time and going through a preseason. It's amazing what that can do for a goaltender.
No doubt. By the way, for those listening, we ask that you subscribe to the podcast, like, and leave a review. For those watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel, where you can find our show and a lot of other great Patriots content. Also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know the instant a new video drops. And don't forget to check out Greg and Mike over at BSJ, $50 for the year. And Joe Haggerty, he can write about Elias Lindholm getting on the board last night, which was really nice to see. Can you believe the Bruins special teams played well? I was almost falling off of my couch watching the special teams last night. I didn't know what team I was watching. Oh, and by the way, maybe you want to follow John Corrales, because I'm already a big fan of the Hugo Gonzalez fan club. I know it's a preseason game in summer league, but Hugo Gonzalez, he looks like an NBA player. So check it out. $50.
How'd my guy Ron Harper Jr. do?
Yeah, he's all right.
All right.
He hit a three. He played a little point guard in the fourth quarter. Nothing overwhelming, but yeah, Luka Garza looked pretty good. But again, it's the preseason. I'm not sitting here telling you anything. It's just I do think Hugo Gonzalez is going to be an NBA player, a solid rotational guy in the very least. I feel like Brad hit on that pick in the late first round. $50 for the year. Boston Sports Journal. Corrales is awesome. Haggerty's great. You know everybody. I mean, Greg has put together a fantastic lineup over there. $50 for the year. Before we get into the game on Sunday, Greg, I feel like I got to ask you about Bill Belichick. And if you don't want to hear this or watch this, just fast forward and get to the matchup, people. But this week has been a little bananas for all the stuff that happened in the offseason with Jordan Hudson and the yoga on the beach and all that shit. This week has been nuts, man. So let's go through it quickly. There was I don't know if I'd call it a rumor, a report, that UNC was not showing social media clips of Drake May because of this back and forth between Belichick and the Patriots. I don't know what to make of it, because I know there was a post that was thrown out there from Sunday night, about Sunday night, but that post was after the tweet saying that they weren't posting things on Drake May, but there were a couple of tweets in the middle of September showing Drake May. So I don't know what to make of that whole social media stuff. I don't know if I believe it, but WRAL came out, TV station down in Carolina, came out and had a report about a divided locker room with anonymous sources and players' parents being pissed. It was not a great story for Bill. Then the Hulu, not a shocker if you want to run state media out of UNC, but the Hulu documentary was canceled. I'm sure that has nothing to do with them being terrible on the field. Then you had the cornerbacks coach get suspended for a benefit issue, which was part of the WRAL story. And then in the last 24 hours, Ali Connolly, who actually broke the story of Belichick going to North Carolina, he tweeted out a thread that you got to check out yourself. I'm not going to go through all of it, but ipso facto, it was Belichick and North Carolina are already discussing a buyout situation. And then Belichick and UNC last night ended up throwing a statement out there, a couple sentences saying, don't pay attention. Everything is fine. It is a mess in Carolina right now.
Yeah. The only thing I'd really say about it is, well, in my opinion, it's over. Like, this is the beginning of the end. It's over. They can put out all the statements they want. To me, I read it as they haven't reached agreement on the exit strategy yet. That could change at any minute, any day. Um, I think that, does he finish out the season? I don't know. I mean, they're in a bye week right now. It would not be a surprise if we get to, the weekend, maybe a Friday night news dump, that Belichick's out. Like, I don't know if he's going to last the season. It's that bad. The reports are that bad. And Ollie Conley is a guy who's, been a NFL and college football scout. So he obviously knows a lot of people. He's talking to people. He's talking about this. There was a quote from a defensive assistant on USC saying, like, it's criminal what we've done to these kids. Like, I mean, look, it's a report. It's, his posts. We'll see if they're ultimately true. But for all the people who, say like, oh, who couldn't see this coming? I mean, look, I am surprised. I didn't know if Bill Belichick would be a, huge success at UNC, but I figured they'd do, they'd show some progress at some point.
Yeah.
So I think it's over for him.
I thought they were going to win 6 or 7 games. It's bad. They're not just losing to FBS teams. They're getting humiliated by FBS teams. It's been brutal. And Belichick, I will say the WRAL story says, the parents and people with the program still believe that Belichick is a good football coach. And when he's coaching these guys one-on-one, it's still good stuff. But everything else, I mean, it is a program that if you read these stories, it's disjointed. It's all over the place. The operation is a mess. And Mike Lombardi gets absolutely crushed in these articles, in these posts. He's not winning many people over in Carolina. Steve Belichick is criticized pretty significantly in the story about his lack of, I would say, I don't know, being personable with the players and relating to the players and some of that stuff. It's ugly, man. It's ugly. And I do feel before the scout story, Greg, a couple weeks ago that came out that said Belichick was keeping, Patriot scouts from UNC practices. Before that story came out, I wanted to see Belichick succeed. I was rooting for Belichick, but that flipped when that story came out because that was different to me. That was impacting young men and their future. And that was being so, we've seen the pettiness between Kraft and Belichick, and both are, both can get some blame here. Okay. I'm not sitting here telling you that I'm excusing Robert Kraft, but that story with the scouts and how Belichick is just, I know your buddy Bert has been writing about this and talking about this, how Belichick has handled the scouts, NFL scouts. And it's the polar opposite of what Nick Saban did at Alabama. And that is not just about Belichick having a pissing contest with Robert Kraft and the Patriots. That is now being petty, and that's being selfish, and that's impacting young men's careers and futures. You are literally getting in the way of these young men having an opportunity of possibly playing in the NFL. And to me, that is inexcusable. So at that point, I was done. I moved on. It is what it is, as he would say, and it's just brutal. And I don't think, what has happened at UNC has just made everything worse for him. And I think he was hoping I'll go to North Carolina. I have this all figured out. We're going to win some football games. Maybe I get back to the NFL. And I mean, it's just the last few years for him, the last 3 or 4 years have been really, really ugly. And if he's not done in the season, I think he's done after the season. And I think he's done. I think it's over. I think he goes to the media for maybe a year or two. But I can't see him coaching again after what's happened the last few years. All right, let's get into the Saints game here with a quick preview for all the fine people. Before we get into the offense, defense, just the importance of this business trip, Greg, for this football team.
Yeah, I think it's huge. We saw them, get up and put together their best, team-wide performance against the Bills. I mean, it wasn't perfect. They still made some critical errors, including the fumble and some, key, penalties. But we all know how, big that win was for them. And it's easy to get up for the Bills on Sunday Night Football and all that stuff. And Josh Allen, can you do it going to New Orleans, a 1:00 game against, to this point, one of the worst teams in the league. I'll just point out that in, DVOA has the Saints ranked overall 31st. The Patriots are 21st. Offense, they're 22nd. Defense, they're 29th. Special teams, they are 32nd. So we are talking about, to this point, and again, we talked about how Ruiz and Young might be back, which, makes a big difference. They need to show some maturity. If they're caught up and think they've arrived and that they're better than they are. And look, I still don't think we can say the Patriots are a good football team. I don't think they're good enough to overlook anybody. They can easily regress and turn the ball over and make mistakes and lose to anybody, as we've seen, with especially the Raiders game in week 1, where now the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the league. And Geno Smith is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, and they made him look like a Pro Bowler in week 1. So they're not that far away from that. If it's important for them to say that we're a maturing football team, we're an improving football team. We have our eyes on the prize. We are locked in week to week on what we're doing. And so, yeah, I think what you said, calling it a business trip, I think is the right way to classify this, because they need to go down and take care of business to sort of validate what they did on Sunday night. Anybody in the NFL can upset anybody, and which we've seen this year. I mean, like the Packers going to the Browns and not playing well after putting up a big victory themselves. Go down and take care of business against the Saints, and I don't really care about style points or anything like that. Just emerge with a victory, and now we're talking another step for this team.
All right, what do you see from this Saints defense on film?
So, I like the Saints defense in a lot of ways. I would say that they're, a little bit weak in the secondary. I think, especially if they get Chase Young back, this defensive line is a problem. Our old friend Devon Godchow is there on the nose tackle, still doing sort of his thing, good against the run. Cameron Jordan is still one of the best players in the league. In my opinion, he's older. He was drafted in 2011, for crying out loud, but he's still very crafty, very good. I look forward to seeing Will Campbell against him. The defensive tackle, Brian Bresee, he was a first rounder a couple years ago out of Clemson, number 90. That dude is a problem up front. He is physical. He makes plays. He's quick. He's really good. You put Chase Young out there with Cameron Jordan on either side. They present issues. I love the Saints linebackers. Pete Warner, number 20, is like Robert Spillane, but on steroids. Is a little bit quicker. He runs around all over the place. He will blitz. He will be a problem. Demario Davis, still a really good player, the former Jet. Justin Reed, apparently he was back at practice, or at least watching, but he's in concussion protocol. We all know he's one of the best in the league when he's out there. I do like the rookie safety, Jonas Sanker, number 33, third round pick this year. He's a rookie, a little bit undisciplined. I would say the secondary as a whole is undisciplined. You can sort of, and this goes, they're an over-aggressive defense. You see this a lot. The Saints like to pride themselves on building a team, a fast team on the turf in the dome. That's always been part of their MO back to when I was a kid with the Dome Patrol and all that stuff. They still try to do that. There's good and bad about that. They create some havoc, but you can also catch them on some trick plays. Who was it? They played the Giants last week, and I know you tweeted about this. I mean, the Giants had like 5 idiotic turnovers in that game. And
Straight.
it's probably
They had 5 consecutive turnovers. I don't know if I've ever seen a football team have 5 straight turnovers. It was insane.
Yeah, but they also dialed up. There was a play that I remember where I don't know if it was a flea flicker, it might have been, or just a really good play action. And Jackson Dart had like 2 guys open. He ended up hitting the guy a little bit late, but the linebackers all got sucked in. It's a play that I'm going to be breaking down on BSJ a little bit later in the week. But that's I look for Josh McDaniels to take advantage of sort of the over aggressiveness on the defense. I think Kool-Aid McKinstry, the second round cornerback out of Alabama in 2024, is a really good player. Again, probably not the sharpest tool in the shed and a little over aggressive, but he's pretty good. So, in that place in the dome, how fast this defense is, it's not going to be a cakewalk for the Patriots defense. For the Patriots offense, I did want to point out a couple of things. So the Saints pass defense is 29th. Their rush defense is 19th. This is in DVOA. Their coverage ranks, they are 32nd in the league against wide receiver ones. So I guess I would classify that as, I'm not sure how they classify it, but I would say that's more Kayshon Boutte than Stephon Diggs as far as where they line up. I think wide receiver 1 is more the X guy. They are 18th in the league against wide receiver 2. They are 28th in the league against wide receiver 3, and they are 27th. They're worse than the Patriots at covering running backs. So those things could all be a factor.
Yeah, there were some thoughts. I watched I've actually watched 2 of the Saints games. I watched the Saints-Bills game to get ready for the Bills, and I watched the Giants-Saints game to get ready for the Saints this weekend. So I've seen a decent amount of the Saints this year. And defensively, I would say the difference between the Giants and the Bills game is kind of interesting, is that the Giants had some opportunities for big plays down the field. You mentioned one of them, but there was another one in the second quarter where there was a flea flicker, and Darius Slayton was wide open. He was wide ass open downfield. He had 3 steps on the defensive back.
Oh yeah,
and Jackson Dart was late, and then he underthrew him by like 2 yards. It should have been 7. It should have been 7. But yeah, when you look at this defense, what's interesting to me, Greg, and let's not forget that the Giants also did not have Malik Neighbors last week because he's done for the season, and there were still some opportunities there. I don't disagree with you about the talent on the defensive line. What's interesting is you look at the analytics, you look at the metrics, they haven't been very good on the defensive. It's kind of stunning to me where you look at, pressure rate and you look at pass rush win rate. They got a lot of talent up front, but they just have not consistently done damage. I thought, Granderson against the Bills was fantastic. He was incredibly difficult to handle. And then Bruzzy was, as you mentioned, he popped against the Giants a few times, but it just seems like they can't find the consistency in games and week to week, because when you look at the numbers, they're not getting the kind of production that you would anticipate from the talent that they have. So it's a very interesting defensive front and front seven, because I agree. I think they've got talent, but it's just the numbers and the production just haven't been there for them. All right. Saints offensively, what do you like? What do you dislike?
I like a lot of what I see. I do think that, being under, first year head coach, Kellen Moore, they're still, figuring some things out. I think the scheme's pretty good. I think they can, I think their 2 backs are really good. I would say Kendry Miller is actually more of the quote unquote starter at this point than Alvin Kamara. They sort of, share duties, but they're both, they can run on the inside. They can press the edges. They're both run really well. They break tackles. I like the scheme. I think that Moore does a good job scheming guys up if the pass protection is there, which has been an issue, and that's why it's such a big deal. If Ruiz can come back, and play well, because I think their offensive line hasn't played great, but I do think that they're pretty good. The wide receivers are an issue. Chris Olave looks really good on film. He is the guy that sort of the offense runs through. He's got 54 targets already this year. Juan Johnson, the tight end, is second with 35. And then Rashid Shaheed, who is the speed guy. The long touchdown that they had against the Giants, that was schemed. That was protection. That was Shaheed's speed down the field. Spencer Rattler hit him right in stride. You don't get any better. He must have thrown the ball 60 yards in the air. It was a great play, but Brandon Cooks is out there, but he's more of sort of third guy, run around guy. Doesn't see a whole lot of action. But those two are a problem at wide receiver. Spencer Rattler, he's all right. Hasn't gotten a whole lot of protection. He's on the smaller side. He is athletic. He will run. They incorporate that into the offense. So it's something you got to prepare for, help slow down the pass rush a little bit. I mean, I kind of like what I see out of them. I just think they're very much a work in progress and are not very consistent. I would say that goes for the whole team. I mean, we saw them, give the Bills a lot of issues. And most of their games outside the Seahawks game, which was in Seattle where they lost 44-13, other than that, they've all been close. And including, they played their best at home in that dome. They lost at home by 7 to the Cardinals to start the season, by 5 to the 49ers, and then they beat the Giants in week 5 at home. Those are all the home games. Yes, the Saints to this point have not been a very good team, and I don't disagree with DVOA on that they are one of the worst teams in the league. I just don't think this is – I would say in my opinion, they're a lot better than the Carolina Panthers, but they're still, like I said, very much a work in progress.
If you're into the miles per hour on the football field thing, Jeremy Springer pointed out to the media about a half hour ago that Rashid Shaheed clocked almost 22 miles per hour on that 87-yard touchdown catch. So a little bit of a tidbit, a little bit of a nugget. And by the way, I do want to throw this out there because I'm not sure we'll get to it early next week. Josh McDaniels speaking to the media, and he was asked if he'd be content coaching Drake May for the rest of his career, or if he aspires to be a head coach again. Took 5 weeks, 6 weeks to get that question out there. And McDaniel said, quote, "I love living in New England. That's the short of it. I just try to focus on now, really enjoying coaching for Mike. That would be surprising if I moved my kids out of Westwood." So that
was a direct quote.
Yes, that's a direct quote. So again, he says he would be surprised. It would be surprising if he moved his kids out of Westwood. So seems like he's content for now. But what I've learned, you never know. You get that phone call, you get that offer. There's money on the table. You can lead your own program again. We'll see. But I think we should all just focus on the next,
Yeah, he's not going anywhere anytime soon, nor do I think any NFL teams are going to want him anytime soon, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I don't think he's going to be a head coach in the NFL ever again. I think he got his 2 shots. It's very difficult to see somebody get 3 shots unless they've won at a prior stop. I don't see that happening. College, maybe if his kids get a little bit older. But Greg, I had I'm not an insider or anything, but I have a pretty good source when it comes to Josh McDaniels. And, I talked to you about it before he took the job and all of that. And I had known some things about Josh and the inner workings there. And from what I understand, he's very happy right now from what I understand. Yes. Now, of course, again, things can change, but from what I have heard, he is very happy where he's living. He's very happy with his life personally, professionally. So as of right now, it would be a surprise, but you never know.
By the way, Nick, on this real quick, not to stoke any controversy or anything like that, but really, really the only scenario, and I don't think it's going to happen because I think Mike Vrabel is going to be the head coach here for a long time and win Super Bowls and, approach what Belichick has done here. Let's just say, I'm a big Vrabel fan, and I think he's going to be here, forever and do a great job. But the only scenario that I see Josh McDaniels getting an NFL head coach is if there's some sort of Parcellsian, Belichickian problem with Mike Vrabel at some point down the line, where maybe he wants more power or, whatever. So, something goes off the rails between Vrabel and the Patriots, and, they decide to part ways. And, Drake May's the quarterback here. And obviously, the Crafts feel good about Josh McDaniels, and, he gets the job. And that's really the only scenario that I see happening. And I don't think it's remotely a possibility, but who knows? You never know.
All right, before we get to the pick this week from Greg, don't forget CLNS Media Network, Celtics All Access, behind-the-scenes content, and segments from many Celtics podcasts that CLNS has, and the NBA History Channel, Patriots Press Pass, and Bruins Ringside. And I remind you again, Prizepicks, you can download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, so the game pick, as all of you know by now, I hold off until the Friday episode of Locked On Patriots, but I do tell you how I'm doing along with Greg. And not surprisingly, I could just run back what I said last week. Greg and I are usually pretty similar, and we are exactly the same so far. Greg is 2-3 straight up. I am 2-3 straight up. We are both 3-2 against the spread. This week, the Patriots are a road favorite. They're a road favorite down in New Orleans. It's Patriots minus 3.5. The over-under number is 45.5. What do you got, Greg?
Yeah, by the way, I just wanted to mention, if somebody would have told me before the game that Ed Oliver was going to be inactive and Matt Milano was going to miss the second half, I would have picked the Patriots in that game. Because I did think they had a decent shot, but I figured those guys would be in the lineup. By the way, one play we didn't talk about in that game where Milano sort of made the difference. Remember that 1st and goal at the 7 play where they ran read option and May got tackled for like no gain? That play was the entire Bills defense was faked out except for one person, Matt Milano, who brought Drake down. If they ran that play, if he was out at that point, and I think he got hurt on that play, sort of tackling Drake May, re-aggravated his pectoral muscle. If he's not out there, Drake May walks in for a touchdown on that play. But as far as this game goes, I think it's going to be a bit of a rock fight. I think the Patriots are going to be hung over a little bit, not play great. I hate, don't even ask my wife about being in the Superdome for a game. She's like, it's instant like migraine headache. When there in the old Metrodome, when the Vikings used to play there, I used to have to put earplugs in because it's just the noise is so bad, and it's an instant headache in that place. And maybe there's a little bit more enthusiasm because the Saints finally won a game last week. I think it's going to be tough, but I do think the Patriots are a better football team. I think they will take care of business at the end of the day. I think the Patriots win by about 7 in this game. I'm going to put it somewhere like 27-20, somewhere about there. But I see the Patriots taking care of business on this business trip.
All right. Well, there you have it. Of course, we will be back live next Tuesday, 12:15 on YouTube. You don't want to miss that. Until then, everybody have a great weekend and enjoy the football. And we'll talk to you soon. He's Greg. I'm Nick. See ya.